"VC, come here! We're all ready for the photo, and we're only waiting for you!" exclaimed a fair-haired, well-dressed girl. "Come on! Everyone is waiting for you!" shouted the young man, who was standing next to a large group of friends. "I'm going!" the girl shouted back when she approached them. "I also want to look beautiful in the photo, so I needed a little more time." With these words, a group of girls and boys, dressed in stylish, expensive clothes, stood in a pile for a photo, which they will leave as a memory of their school life. VC was the girl who always smiled. She is the one who reminded about the meaning of life with a bright ray in the most overcast sky. It was she who was able to find the right key and unlock the door, which was already covered with dust from long waiting and despair. Her story begins right now, when the door to a safe and carefree life closes forever, right in front of her little nose. Now she will be able to take care of herself, although she has been doing it for a long time. But she did not dare to admit it even to herself. She has a boyfriend. His name is Kale. He is her peer, who entered the 10th grade with her. Their meeting was typical. They sat together at the same desk, studied, and walked in the same park. Vese always wanted to learn about the world, to go to something new, unknown, and possibly extreme or dangerous. Sometimes it seemed that two personalities lived in her. The first sought peace and balance in life, and the second sought adventure and drive. The girl was positive, even when everyone gave up. Usually, her entourage included people of various social and financial requirements. She was able to find an approach to each person and quickly find the root of any problem. In the life of the main character, cheerful chaos always reigned, in which she skillfully kept herself. Learning was fun, and the family was accommodating. She always achieved her goals and skillfully stepped over unnecessary people in her life. Despite the fact that she was only 18 years old, Kale became her first boyfriend with whom she agreed to a relationship. She was attracted by his bright appearance, ability to support any topic in communication, and education. He caused her a lot of kindness and a sense of peace. Parubak was reliable in relationships, restrained in his statements, and submissive and compliant in making decisions. VC liked it, who was used to making decisions on her own and not caring about the opinions of others. She also liked his appearance, which was hard not to notice, even in a large crowd of people. Kale had big blue eyes, blonde hair, fragile and delicate lips that folded like a bow, black thin eyebrows, tall height, long fingers, and a thin build. In terms of physique, he was more like a girl than a man, but this did not prevent him from having a large audience of fans. He knew his worth, so he was looking for a life partner according to certain criteria, which VC fit perfectly. She was a slender, small girl. Most of all, he liked her shyness, which did not affect her self-confidence and her actions. She did not fall under the influence of others, both in a good and in a bad sense. She liked to read a lot. She had a creative nature. Just as he wrote poems, they had similar tastes in watching movies, food, and even spending time together. They never quarreled, found compromises, and did not pay attention to those who were not at all interesting to them. After finishing school, they chose a university together, so that even there, they would be closer to each other. She wanted to study as an artist, and he wanted to study as an actor or musician. The girl also knew how to dress with taste, which could not fail to please her boyfriend, who simply hated girls who were openly dressed. Vese's appearance, on the other hand, was not unusual, she believed. She had green eyes, a small, slightly pointed nose, a thin flush on her cheeks, blonde hair, long eyelashes, and slightly plump lips. Her build was also slender, her hands and fingers thin and graceful, her collarbones prominent, her eyebrows thin, and her cheekbones barely defined. Kale also liked her ringing and attractive laugh, pleasant voice, and manner of communication. She never lacked time for him, always texting and working on the relationship with him. The boy was satisfied with his choice, and every time he bragged about it to his friends, who envied him. He was a sociable person, so he often attended good performances or went to meet friends in cafes or restaurants. The only thing he didn't like in a relationship was a third person, and unfortunately, they had just such a situation. Due to Vise's charisma and kindness, she made friends with everyone, But despite this, she considered only one person to be a worthy friend. It was Violet. They were completely different in appearance, but quite close and similar in character. The girls often spent time together, which Kale did not like very much. He was very jealous in this matter, since before the appearance of Violet in their lives, Vazi devoted more of her free time to him. The best friend of the main character did not have a long-term relationship, but despite this, many of the boys dreamed of a relationship with her. The girl knew about it, but was in no hurry to connect her life with someone. Despite the fact that she had only recently turned 19, her life was full. She attended many closed parties, visited many clubs, and hitchhiked around the world. Violet never lacked attention from others. She found company anywhere, and in a matter of minutes poured into it as if she had known these people all her life. All this was facilitated by her openness and sincerity, which she never hid from new acquaintances. Most often, she was called Universal Friend, as she was always for any plan or fun. Vise met her by chance. When she moved to her new apartment, which was closer to the school, she decided to go for a walk, but got lost. It was then that they met Violet, who quickly navigated the new space. The girls have been friends for more than 2 years, but during all this time, they have never quarreled or argued. The only thing Violet didn't like was the VZ guy. She found him boring, and the dislike appeared from their first meeting. Kale, in turn, considered her frivolous and too loose. He was afraid that she would have a negative influence on his girlfriend. Besides, he knew that when they went out together, Violet liked to have fun and drink. Ever since they met, Visi had been caught between two fires, biting and burning her from both sides. She tried to devote her time both to her companion in life and to her respite from everyday affairs, her girlfriend. However, today is her graduation from school, and an even more intense and adventurous life awaits her, which she is ready to enter with her head held high. The girl decided to meet her friend, having previously agreed to meet in a cafe to invite her to a school party. Going inside, she saw Violet, who was already sitting at the table and waiting for the order. "Hello, I'm so glad that we met today," the main character spoke loudly, coming closer. "Hello, little fox sister," answered with a sincere smile the friend who started calling her that after she started hiding their frequent meetings from her boyfriend. They sat down at the table, laughing loudly. "I want to invite you to a party. Today is my graduation, so everyone who wants to come will be in the schoolyard, and I would like to see you there. You know, I'm only 4, but Kale will be there too, who most likely won't be happy that I'm coming," Violet reproachfully remarked, showing her resentment with all her appearance. "No, today he won't mind, especially since I don't want to talk about it, but it's important for me to have you around," Vesey confidently stated, which surprised her friend, who previously could not even think about such behavior girls. They talked on various topics and did not even keep track of the time. It was already dark in the yard, and the main character's phone was on silent mode. It seemed as if she was enjoying her last moment of freedom. Looking at the clock, Violet noticed that it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. "It's getting late and the party starts at 9, so I think I better go home and start getting ready." "Wow, I didn't even notice. Time flew by so quickly that I didn't even have time to tell Kale." Realizing her mistake, the girl's hands shook and she quickly dipped her hand into her purse to find her phone. "Oh, by the way, how is it that in 3 hours, your mega-caring boyfriend hasn't even called you? Did you have a fight? Is it even possible that they broke up?" Violet asked, laughing merrily. But in a moment, her ringing laughter died down. She saw Vizi's face change as she picked up the phone. Her eyes filled with tears, and her hands were shaking. "Stop! What's the matter?" asked the young girl nervously, who had already guessed what exactly had happened. "I have 8 missed calls and 25 messages from Kale," she said quickly and worriedly. "Oh, Lord, I also have a tragedy. Just take it and call him now. Explain that you didn't hear the phone ringing, that's all." Violet firmly supported her friend, knowing that they reconciled quite instantly as they cooled down quickly. The girls left the cafe. The main character called a taxi and said goodbye to her friend. All the time, while she was on the road, she tried to call Kale, who stubbornly did not pick up the phone, as if hinting that he no longer needed her. Arriving home, VC decided not to bother him anymore, so she started to get ready for the party. When she finished, she looked at the time, realizing that she had to call a taxi and go to school. She called her friend, who assured her that there would be no delays. The main character did not doubt her words, as she knew that she is punctual and never late. By the way, you have a cool surprise waiting for you. I prepared it myself, Villette said cheerfully and emotionally. Okay, I'll look forward to it, the girl replied before ending the phone call. Vesey tried to control herself and assured that everything would be fine. She had hoped that when they met with Kale, they could discuss this in peace, but she was quite surprised because it had never happened before. Having driven all bad thoughts away from her, the young and fragile lady prepared to go out. She noticed that there was still plenty of time, so she decided not to take a taxi and walk to school. It was quite warm outside. She was dressed in a beautiful, long red dress. On her feet were shoes with low heels, from the new collection, a black handbag, and bright expensive jewelry. Arriving at the schoolyard, she immediately noticed familiar faces already standing in the company. She froze when she saw her Kale. He was dressed in a black tuxedo, his hair slicked back and varnished. He stood a little apart from everyone, looking at the phone. Vesey decided to go to her boyfriend first, to have a frank talk, and finally reconcile. She passed the company, which happily greeted her, but for now, it did not please the girl, so without answering anything, she continued to walk further. Approaching the boy, the girl stopped, but he did not react to her. Kale, please, let's talk, she suggested nervously, seeing that the boy was not responding to her. Oh, VC, did you finally find time for me? You're welcome. So it turns out that you need me only when you're free? He said reproachfully and with contempt. No. Wait. You didn't understand everything that way, tried to assure the girl, who was not used to justifying her actions. Nai, I'm here. I'm waiting. Can you explain to me what you were so busy with that you couldn't even answer one of my calls? The boy was already turning to shouting, from the resentment that was sitting inside him. My phone was in silent mode, so I didn't hear or see your calls and messages, emotionally explained the companion. I'm not interested in it. Where and with whom were you? The young man asked after calming down a little. I was with Violette. We sat in a cafe and just talked. I wanted to invite her to the party tonight. She changed to a calmer tone as well, but she could see Kale starting to rage again with every word she said. The boy did not want to spoil tonight, but anger and resentment did not allow him to concentrate on a good mood. He remained silent and carefully looked at his beloved girl. She looked at him with the hope that he could understand her. The young man exhaled heavily. The next moment, he hugged the girl tightly and gently kissed her on the cheek. To VC, that meant only one thing. He forgave her, which made her heart and soul rejoice. At that moment, they heard a loud noise of engines. The main character turned quickly and saw how 3 motorcycles drove into the yard, and her friend was sitting on the first of them, holding many colorful balloons in her hand. It was a complete surprise and a firework of emotions for VC, who expected everything from Violet, but not this. Strong guys, who were driving expensive motorcycles, also showed cool tricks and stopped after driving a small circle. The main character held her breath for a moment, but when she saw that her friend deftly got out of the back seat and stretched out her arms, as if waiting for a strong hug, she jumped up and rushed towards her. She hugged her friend tightly, who seemed to be waiting for just this. Everyone present clapped their hands, and some even started whistling. How beautiful it is! Violet, thank you! You're the best! Vesey shouted happily, still in awe of what she saw. She could not believe that all this was done only for her alone. Sonny, I wanted you to like it, but I still have to introduce you to them. The girl laughed loudly, pointing with her finger at the burly men who were still sitting on motorcycles in leather jackets. Wow, is it necessary? The main character asked, a little embarrassed and cautiously. It seemed to her a kind of miracle and unreality. Yes, she knew that anything could be expected from her friend, but she was not prepared for the fact that she was acquainted with such people. Hey, we're saying goodbye to your childhood, so I thought that this would be a bright example, And the most important thing is that you will definitely remember this for the rest of your life. Saying this, she laughed loudly and pulled her hand to Guy's. Violet gave the balls to her friend and introduced her to a gang called Black Snakes. There were many participants in it, but only 3 came: Volan, Leo, and Zane. They all looked stern and dangerous. Each of them excited the girls who watched them carefully. Vesey always wanted to try something extreme, but after looking at the dimensions of the motorcycles, she realized that she was not ready to jump into the unknown. Volan, who brought the girlfriend of the main character, scared the girl the most. He had a short haircut, pitch black eyes, plump lips, and a massive, strong body. He looked at her as if he could see right through her, but he smiled mischievously. Leo and Zane were also massive, but more talkative and kind. They joked, laughed, and drank a little, which Volan didn't. He just sat on his horse and silently watched the others. After talking for a while, they heard the school principal being invited to the microphone. He briefly greeted everyone present here and gave a speech that almost everyone already knew by heart. After that, a loud sound of bass and rhythmic music spread across the yard. Waiters were also present at the party, delivering snacks and alcohol. Only now, Vesey noticed that she had completely talked to her friend and new short-term acquaintances, and completely let her boyfriend out of her sight. She turned to Violet, who was laughing and joking with the bikers, and already drinking her 4th glass of strong drink. "I'm sorry, I want to leave for a while to find Kale," the main character said somewhat uncertainly and awkwardly. The friend saw that the girl was worried, so she offered another option. "Stand here, talk to them, and I'll find your faithful for the time being," she said decisively, and without waiting for an answer, dozed off into the crowd. Vesey stood confused, not knowing what to do now and what to talk about with her new acquaintances. However, the silence did not last long, as Leo decided to take the initiative. "You are so modest, you haven't even drunk a single glass. Does the guy forbid?" Asking this, the audience laughed loudly. "No, I just don't want to drink yet. I'm not in such a relationship with the boy that he forbids me, or I forbid him," the girl explained. "Are you worried about something?" Zane asked, when he noticed that the interlocutor was constantly looking for someone with her eyes in the crowd. "No, it's just that Violet went to look for my boyfriend, but she still hasn't returned," the main character said, wringing her hands from her worries. The boys looked at each other, but said nothing. Only Volan was calm and did not react to her words, and did not even try to understand the meaning of the conversation. From time to time, the man looked at the phone and exhaled heavily. Noticing this, Vesey decided to inquire what the matter was, but the answer shocked her. "This has nothing to do with good little girls looking for their soulmate at the children's school disco," he said, as if he was trying to provoke a reaction or hear a rebuttal to his words. The main character was angry when she heard this, but decided not to show her emotions, guessing about his cunning but so primitive plan. "Yes, indeed, you are right. I should not know about the plans or life of a stranger to me, but I should think about my other half, because I worry about him and want to be sure that everything is fine with him," the girl confidently informed. Hearing this, Volan bit his lower lip, realizing that her response was not primitive, and not at all like other frivolous girls who would simply forget about their boyfriend when they saw him, as it usually happened. For a self-confident, young, ambitious man, her words sounded like a challenge, and fuel was added to the fire by comrades who shouted loudly when they heard the answer of a new acquaintance. "You behave quite well and decently, even when your boyfriend is not around," the opponent remarked. After that, he quickly and carefully leaned into the main character's ear and whispered, "But the question is, will you be as modest if I tell you that it will all be a secret and no one will ever know a thing?" Volan knew this trick had worked on many a good girl who swore loyalty, so he did not hide his smile on his face. These words caused a swarm of ants on the girl's skin. Her heart beat faster as she thought, "No, I can't do this to Kyle, whom I truly love." Realizing this, she immediately came to her senses and slapped him on the cheek. Her heart was pounding with adrenaline. She had never hit anyone, much less usually responded to provocations. But now was a slightly different situation, where they were trying to belittle her and her loyalty and honor by comparing her to those who disgusted her. Man reacted to the surprise calmly. He leaned back a little and licked his lips. For him, it was just a game, while for her, it was a blow to the heart. Unable to hold back tears of resentment, the girl quickly turned away and walked away. She wanted to forget those caustic words. The heart was filled with resentment even more. She wanted to talk to her friend, to hear words of support from such a dear and beloved Kale. Ignoring the familiar faces that addressed her, she went inside the open school. The girl was broken, so she decided to go to the bathroom to wash herself with cold water and come to her senses a little. Entering the bathroom on the first floor, she turned on the water. VC decided that as soon as she calmed down, she would immediately go in search of her friend, who should already have found her boyfriend. She was distracted from her thoughts by someone's whisper coming from the booth. "This kiss means nothing," said the girl nervously. "I also don't want anyone to find out about it, especially her." The main character heard the young man's voice. Because of the whispers, she couldn't understand who it was at all, but now it was the last thing that bothered her. After quickly washing herself, she left the dressing room and bumped into someone's firm and large figure. Lifting her head up, she saw Volan in front of her, who was breathing heavily and looking at her intently. "What are you doing here?" the girl asked angrily, looking at him with disgust. "I decided that you were offended and ran to cry, and I see that I understood everything correctly," he said, catching his breath. "I don't cry because of the words of fools." Every word of the main character was filled with contempt. "But be angry with me. But if my words didn't bother you at all, you would have behaved differently." Again he behaved too self-confidently, which angered Visi even more. "You know what? You are not interesting at all, and all you have is an attractive appearance. You are just a beautiful picture, without emotions, soul, or mutual respect. That's why you're not interested in me at all." The girl wanted to continue expressing her opinion, but saw how the opponent's face changed and began to fade into a smile. She did not have time to come to her senses and understand what was happening, as the young man sharply and quickly grabbed her by the shoulders and turned her towards the open door of the dressing room. She saw her frightened friend holding a finger to her mouth, as if begging him to be quiet. Kale stood scared and drunk. He was definitely confused, as he was not ready for such a meeting. At the same time, Violet was looking hatefully at Volan, who was standing behind her friend, holding her shoulders tightly and smiling. This whole situation made the young man laugh. He never sympathized with anyone, as he believed that everyone makes their own choice and then bears responsibility for it. He felt his thin shoulders seem to disappear from his hands and fall to the floor. Noticing this, he immediately reacted and grabbed the girl by the waist with his right hand so that she did not fall down at all. The man pressed her fragile back tighter to his chest and gently held her shoulder with his left hand. Seeing this, Kale got angry and quickly ran towards them. He removed the opponent's hand from her shoulder, intercepting the girl. "Don't touch her!" he shouted loudly, unable to contain his anger. "Behave more calmly. Now, in the toilet, I didn't cheat on my girlfriend, but you. You should not forget about your dignity, it seems so. She was talking about herself when she meant the relationship with you," the young man calmly remarked. Hearing this, the young girl quickly turned to him, which made it possible to see her red eyes from tears. She pulled away, and his heavy hand loosened its rock-solid grip. "How do you know that he just cheated on me in the dressing room?" Her voice became more and more shrill and hard. Violet wanted to explain everything, but as soon as she approached her friend, she pushed her away and looked at her new acquaintance again. Despite the fact that the tension was growing, the young man was still as emotionless and calm. He shifted his gaze first to Violet, who was standing aside, her eyes shining with fear and understanding of the situation, and then he looked at Visi. "It was a task with which your friend, or perhaps a former friend, coped with 100%. As he said this, he could see how much it hurt this little defenseless bird, who seemed to be trying not to hear these words. "What task? What is it for? But why my boyfriend?" she desperately shouted, as if unable to believe that it was true. "I think the culprit of this celebration will be able to answer these questions for you." He again turned his gaze to the girl who was standing aside and was already starting to cry. The main character quickly and decisively turned her gaze to her. She wanted to know the truth, so she was ready to hear the whole story. Villette was scared and ashamed of her behavior. Only now she began to understand that she had made a fatal mistake. I didn't want to, came out of her thin lips. I'm not interested in it. Do I want to know the truth? What is between you? With these words, the girl removed Kale's hand and approached her friend. It was just a task, forgive me, the young girl shouted and cried loudly. Realizing that she no longer believed him or her, she turned to Volan. I think you wanted me to go with you, right? She said in a trembling voice, like a child who wanted to go to rebuke her parents. The young man said nothing, but confirmed her words with a nod. She looked at him as a salvation, and Kale standing next to her did not even contradict her words. Oh, I want to go with you! Saying this, the girl ran to the exit. On the way to his motorcycle, she grabbed a glass of champagne and drank it in no time. This made it possible to calm down a little. Volan caught up with her without even making an effort. Visi noticed him next to her. She couldn't help herself from rage and resentment towards the two closest people, as it seemed to her before. Alcohol quickly hit her head. She turned to her opponent and looked him straight in the eyes with purpose. Kiss me, she commanded firmly as their eyes met. This only caused laughter from the boy, who was still looking at her like a little girl. No, it's not funny. Kiss! She yelled, so that Leo and Zane, who were standing nearby, heard it and turned their heads in their direction. I don't understand what happened already, Zane asked. It's not so important anymore, because this little girl doesn't know that Volan has a golden spell, the young man said with a smile, and looked at his friend, who seemed to come to his senses when he heard these words. Leo liked VC as a person, so he didn't want their pack leader to ruin her life and hurt her. Quickly abandoning the glass of strong drink, he headed towards them to distract her. At this time, they stood and looked at each other. Parubak could not muster the strength to make the right decision at the moment when the main character's disheveled soul was desperately trying to close the black hole of pain and resentment. As soon as Leo reached them, he immediately grabbed the girl's hand and pulled him to himself. It was quite unexpected and perhaps premature. He pressed her to his chest and glared at his opponent. The young man was not ready for this. Even more, he was surprised to find that he didn't like seeing her in Leo's arms at all. For this reason, the man quickly turned her to him and approached. Their eyes met again, and hot breath mingled in the air. Visi looked at him submissively as the young man carefully ran his finger over the girl's plump lips. Do you really want this? He asked, as if hoping for a negative answer. A herd of small ants once again ran over the main character's body. She tried to regain consciousness, but the smell of cologne mixed with the smell of cigarettes prevented her from doing so. Breathing was heavy and hot. I want, she said, exhaling heavily, as if in a whisper, so that no one but him would hear these words. Before she could recover, hot lips gently touched hers. This caused her body to shudder in surprise. Only now she realized that this was her first kiss. Her heart was pounding as if it wanted to burst out of her chest. His hands gently touched her waist. He carefully ran his fingers through his loose hair and looked at her. Vasey was trembling. Her head felt dizzy. She tried to breathe, but something seemed to prevent her from inhaling fully. The main character could not wait any longer, but when she saw the sharp look of her new acquaintance, she decided to explain. This is my first kiss, she said nervously. Close your eyes and trust me, he told her rather strictly. Unable to argue, the girl did as Volan demanded. Their lips touched again, and their thoughts spun. So, she was able to trust the first person she met, but she could not open up to the one with whom she had been together for more than 2 years.